Chapter 11. I went into the army for 2 years. There was a lot of heavy drinking on my part. I was sent to Germany for my tour of duty with an infantry battalion. I was fortunate that I was not sent to Vietnam to fight in the war. I was still weak and frail physically, something remarkable and that I can't explain happened to me beginning about 2 months before I was to be discharged. Something within me came to life. It was a powerful, incredible experience of thought, feeling, and being. I started to read philosophy and psychology books. I no longer wanted to be a drunkard. I stopped drinking. I was excited when I was discharged. I went to Philadelphia. It was 300 miles from Pittsburgh. I wanted a fresh start. I wanted an opportunity for a new beginning. I had already begun to expand the topics of my reading to include fiction novels and self-help books. I set out upon a search to solve my own mystery of being within. I was earnest. I was enthusiastic. I was idealistic. I thought I wanted to be happy at living my life. I felt I had to be like a detective, uncovering clues that, when put together, would have a special meaning to help me unlock life's secret at living it as being fulfilled. My academic skills were poor. I flunked out of 2 colleges. My first college was Temple University. In 1969, I had completed 30 credits, which was 2 semesters. I had received B's, which I thought was a positive. Maybe 1 month before the fall semester, I had an appointment with the academic advisor. She had scheduled 5 courses for me to take. One of them was a public speaking class. I told her I did not want to take such a class at this time, but I would be willing to take the class at a later date. She said, "No, I want you to take this course this semester." I said, "I have difficulty talking in front of other people. I will just start stuttering. I won't be able to speak." She responded to me again with the same statement that she said before. I said, "I don't want to take this course now." She said, I have scheduled you to take this course this semester. You will do okay in it." I said nothing in response to her. I went to all 5 of my classes that semester. In the public speech course, I went for 1/2 of the semester. I didn't have to get up in front of the class and give a speech until mid-semester. I had to prepare what I was going to say, but I wouldn't be allowed to read it. I was terrified that it would be like it was for me in the 9th grade. I wouldn't be able to talk. All that would come out of my mouth would be a stutter. My worst nightmare would be me standing before the class, stuttering and weeping. I would wish death for myself before I could allow that to happen. I never showed up for the class of my scheduled speech. I stopped going altogether to the rest of my classes. I received 5 F's for the semester. I dropped out of Temple University. I worked at several jobs as an accounting clerk. I would sit at a desk for long periods of time, filing papers and adding numbers to fill in for reports. The jobs were monotonous. There was a lot of empty space in my mind. An unmoving visual image of myself as an 8 or 9-year-old child would come into my mind. It would start It would just stay there in front of me. I felt vulnerable. I was afraid that I would start weeping. I had to get a tight hold and grip on these thoughts and emotions. I could not let any of them get out of control. I did not want to lose my mind in front of other people and start weeping and have a breakdown. I would continue filing I would continue filling the papers or adding the numbers. And with all my might, I would think of other thoughts, mostly women in sports. I thought of women as pretty and sexually attractive. I couldn't make any connections with any of them emotionally or for friendship. There was a change in the way I thought of them. The many romantic thoughts and fantasies I used to have of them when I was younger were now fleeting. The women were sexual objects. An unknown and intangible inside me told me that I was out of line and I was in the wrong. I tried unsuccessfully to crush my sexual feelings for women. I felt impure for having them. If I waited until I got married, everything would be okay. For 2 years, I didn't drink any alcohol. I withdrew into isolation. I continued reading books from the library and bookstores. I was trying to teach myself to write. I would time myself. I would sit alone with a pen and paper for an hour and then try to write whatever came to mind. I tried to forbid sexual thinking as being impure. I began to see what was within me. The energy that was coming to be within me was hatred. I was becoming unfeeling in a cruel way. I fought the hatred and cruelty because I felt that what I was feeling was wrong in a moral sense. Should I not be aspiring and striving within myself for what were noble, honorable ideals to live for within? I had many questions. I asked them and tried to find help answering them within the books I read. I was 23. If I wasn't reading a compelling novel or book, then too often I kept having flashbacks to the beatings, the terror, my shame, and the ugliness of it all. I tried to block all this out from my mind's eye, but I couldn't. It was making me sick in a horrible way. That was unrelenting. My past wouldn't let me go. It had a stranglehold on me. I began to drink alcohol and frequent the bars again. I was becoming a cold-hearted guy regarding women. I said to myself, a woman's love, what is it worth? Of what value is it? Nothing. There were neighbor. There were neighborhood bars where I would go to watch sports games on TV. Once more, I liked the feeling of being half lit and drunk, the emotional warmth, the friendship and fellowship at the bars, watching sports with other guys. I wrote a letter to my mother. It was short and to the point. I am ending this relationship. You will never see nor hear from me again. I didn't owe her any explanations, and none were given. A week later, there was a knock on my apartment door. It was my mother and father. I looked at them. I was not happy to see either one. I told them to wait in the lobby and I would be downstairs in 5 minutes. If my mother had been alone, I might have behaved differently, but having my father there was the kiss of death as far as any attempted reconciliation. When I saw the two of them downstairs, I said, is a place near here where we can go to. We sat in a booth. The two of them sat on one side, and I sat on the other side. I wanted to get this over with. Whatever whatever sentiment of niceness, or even an acknowledgement that either of the two of them were one of my parents, I killed. I made myself be cruel. I was unsmiling. I forced myself to be unmoved by any comments that either of them made to me. Kindness was a weakness that they would not be shown. I ordered only a beverage. My father said nothing. All I remember is that my mother appealed to me to not do this. Whether she expressed care towards me or not, I don't remember. Whatever she said, I blocked out of my mind from hearing any of it. When she finished, I waited no more than half a minute to pass. I said, "Is that it?" There was silence. I got up and left the table and walked out the front door. I erected I erected a wall inside my mind. Any thought of the two of them I dismissed. I would not permit myself to think of either of them. I continued to try and teach myself how to write. I wasn't logical in my thoughts. I lacked mental concentration. What I sought in writing was a spontaneity of feeling and of being from within my thoughts. I experienced an unknown intangible within me that was not alive unless I attempted to express it. I was a heavy smoker. I liked smoking. Cigarettes were my friends. I didn't care who was with I didn't care who was with or around me when I smoked. I was developing an arrogance. I started going to my second college, LaSalle College, SALLE, LaSalle College. Part time in the evening. I was studying accounting. I was making a go out of living life, and I was a responsible member of society. I worked full time as an accounting clerk, went to school at night, paid my bills, and went to the bars on the weekends to socialize and drink. Without the alcohol to animate me, it was like I was a dead person inside, numb, without emotion or feeling to share or to experience with other people. I was a ferocious reader. Part of me lived and experienced life in the many fiction novels I read. I liked crime, horror, adventure, drama, and psychological suspense novels. With the exception of the reading of the books that was different within me. With the exception of the reading of the books, what was different within me was that everything else in my life seemed to be meaningless and unimportant. I hurled myself into the writing. I wanted to be a writer of fiction novels, yet I had no tales to tell. My mind always drew a blank. On occasion, I tried writing about my past. It seemed to be it seemed to me to be a triumph of a pornography of evil from the perpetrator's point of view. To relive my past in order to tell it to someone, my inclination was to kill it. I was an adult now, not a child. My past kept traumatizing me in an ill way. It wouldn't go away. I couldn't make sense of why I was still here on this planet. I tried living my inner life as a monk, renouncing worldly pleasures and desires. I couldn't help but to think of sexual fantasies and of a woman's beauty. I was a failure. I wanted to reject my life and to throw it all away and to be done with it. I remember once at work that Mother's Day was coming up on the weekend. It was break time. I took my break with several work acquaintances. Afterwards, one of them was an elderly woman who asked me what gift I was going to give my mother on this Sunday. I said nothing. She looked at me with indignation, and with her hands on her hips, she exclaimed, "What? How do you think you got here?" I looked her dead in the eye. I said with a flat voice, "I woke up and I was here." She was dumbfounded at my response. I turned my back to her and I walked away. While I sat at the work desk filing papers or adding numbers to reconcile to computerized reports, the visual image of myself as an 8 or 9-year-old wouldn't go away. It would stay at the forefront of my imagination. I made a conscious decision. I did not want this child in my mind's eye. I began to shoot the child with a pistol. The bullet would go right between the eyes of the child. It would fall dead to the ground. The image of myself as a small child would not go away. It just stayed there, right in front of my mind's eye. I would shoot the child again, right between the eyes. It would fall to the ground. I did it over and over throughout the days, weeks, and months. At least 2 years, then suddenly the image of the child vanished. What else went away altogether was a restraint on my behavior. I became uninhibited with bad behavior that sought to do me in. I experienced a heavy-handed push downwards, along with a loss of a willingness over a period of time to make a go out of living life. The way I acted this out was through a gambling addiction, a lethal one. At the ages of 25 and 26, I saw killing myself as atoning for never once fighting back against my father and for my shameful behavior in front of him. What kind of weakling and coward was I? One I despised and wanted to kill. I sought redemption. In the early mornings, the way I would get myself up out of bed to get ready for work, going to work, would be to start cursing myself in a rage, calling myself the names and obscenities that my father and mother used to call me as a child and a teenager. I was 25. I was an accounting clerk for a bank. There was a young woman in her early 20s who came to work in our office of 12 people. She was a newlywed. She told me that she paid over $500 to an employment agency to obtain the job as a bank reconciliation clerk in our office. She was a quiet gal. The newlywed was a slow learner. I talked with her. She didn't have any previous work experience reconciling bank accounts. She needed time to learn. She wasn't given the time. After 3 months, she was abruptly let go. I felt bad for her. She had paid over $500 to get the job. She was paid maybe $110 a week. I thought this incident of getting fired was very unfair and unjust to the newlywed. I wanted to take a stand against the injustice of the way she was treated, regardless of the consequences that would be handed down to me by my supervisors. I barely knew this woman, and I wasn't attracted to her sexually, but I wanted to do what I thought was a noble, honorable action for someone. This was the best that I could come up with: self-sacrifice. I didn't say anything to anyone. A month later, when I had my job performance report and was awarded a $10 a week raise, I refused it. I told the manager that I would work at the job with the same salary that I was making, $115 a week. He wasn't pleased. He took a dim view of my attitude and proposed action. He sent me to personnel to explain myself. The lady there asked me several times for an explanation. She wanted to understand. I kept silent. The next day, I was terminated. I wasn't happy about this, but I felt that I had stood up and protested against the unfair and unjust way this young woman had been treated. I had no regrets about my behavior. I thought I had performed an honorable action. I was fortunate enough to find another job, though at lower pay. Of all the fiction novels and short stories I had read, the one that stayed with me and impacted me the most was a short story by Willa Cather. In the story Paul's Case, a young man had gone to an expensive hotel and rented a room for several days. He enjoyed his stay at the hotel. When his stay ended, he went down to the railroad tracks and threw himself in front of an oncoming train and killed himself. I imagine that this young man had a very good reason for ending his life. To me, he was a courageous young man. I thought he did not think life was worth living, so he performed the noble action and committed suicide. I thought this deed was strong and heroic. I admired him for doing such. With the arrogance I had within my person, I thought that if push ever came to shove, I would be able to act as the young man in the story did without compu- compunction. I had already begun to idealize the act of suicide. My life was one of emptiness and absence of light and spirit. My atheism was combative and assertive. This was what was going to allow me to kill myself. I would be making a statement inside of me that would be meaningful, a protest and a rejection of the life I carried around within me throughout the day. I had a gambling addiction. It intensified. I began to bet larger amounts of money to pique my interest in the outcome of the games. I had begun to believe in a process of magical thinking, where if I studied and thought long and hard enough about each of the games, that I would be able to predict their outcome and whether or not the point spread would be covered by the team that was the favorite. I wanted to have the process of predicting the outcome of games be something that I could exercise at will and that would be genuine. The way to accomplish this was to put my body and soul into the intuition of guessing the outcome of each of the games. The way to force and to compel myself to put body and soul into this process was to bet my life on the outcome of the game of my choosing, along with money I didn't have to lose. If I lost the game, so what? I wouldn't lose any money that I didn't have to begin with. All I would lose would be my life. I would jump off a bridge that was an overpass over the Amtrak railroad tracks near downtown Philadelphia. I had such an arrogance of self-will that I thought that killing myself would be no big deal. I could do this. I dropped out of college again. I quit my job. I just stopped showing up for work altogether. The supervisor wouldn't mail me my final check. He wanted me to come into work to see him before he would give me the check. I never went in to pick up that check. I was free of any obligation to anyone. There was nothing inside me to put a halt to this. I was truly bereft of hope. Despair drove me. The cowardice I experienced was that I deserved to die. I was unwilling to make more than even the slightest effort at living. I was unwilling to continue trying to make connections with other people through friendship and acquaintanceship. I was unwilling to be a part of the world in a positive, constructive way through practicing the work ethic to support myself. I was an acknowledged failure, unworthy of the gift of life and not wanting it. I bet money, $500, that I didn't have with a bookmaker. It was 1973. The bookmaker was connected to the South Philadelphia Mafia. He was a big, burly guy. He had emphatically warned me with a veiled threat at the beginning of the season when I first started betting with him not to be putting up money that I didn't have or couldn't pay off if I lost. He told me how the bookmaking operation worked in South Philadelphia and the part that he played in its running. He collected money from the people who lost, and he paid off the people who won. As the football season unfolded and as I began to increase my bets with him, going from $20 to $40 and then to $100, he told me what he had done the previous week. One of the guys had bet and lost big, whatever amount that was, several weeks ago. He didn't make any attempt to pay off his debt despite warnings from the bookmaker. The previous week, the bookmaker had tracked him down and physically beat him into a pulp, putting him into the hospital. He said he had tremendous regret at what he did to this guy because the guy had seemed okay to him during the time that he had known him. He said he didn't have a choice. It was part of his job. It was part of his job, and the guy he had pounded still had to pay off his debt. He did mention that a guy could make an arrangement with him to pay his debt off piecemeal, but if a guy tried to skip out of paying off his losses, then the bookmaking operation he was a part of had resources. The guy would be tracked down and dealt with accordingly. I got the message. There was no way I would be able to withstand a beating from this bookmaker. If I lost the bet, I thought arrogantly that I would rather end my life and that it was that simple to do it. It was 3 weeks before I felt compelled to make the $500 bet. I gave a tremendous amount of thought and study to an upcoming game I could not lose. It was a Monday night football game between Washington and Dallas. I bet Washington. They were giving a couple of points to Dallas. It was the fourth quarter, and with about 2 minutes left to play, Washington was winning by 4 or 5 points. I was going to win my bet. Dallas punted to Washington. The punt hit a Washington player on the head. It was a fumble, and Dallas recovered on about the Washington 30-yard line. They drove the ball effortlessly down to around Washington's 4-yard line. It seemed almost certain that Dallas was going to score a touchdown, and I was going to lose my bet. The bridge that I was going to jump off of was about 5 miles away. What came to me was a solemn regret for making this bet. What was I thinking? I knew with a sudden, absolute certainty that I didn't want to commit suicide. I had made a colossal blunder in betting my life. Washington's defense stopped Dallas from scoring. I won my bet. I escaped intact with my life and my dignity. I had been given a second chance. I wanted to live. A couple of months later, I enlisted in the Marine Corps. I called my mother. I was willing to reconcile with her. I visited her back in Pittsburgh before I went into the Marines. My father stayed in the background. My present day. What I have known is that the evil I experienced from my biological father when I grew up was hatred, rage, obscenity, and physical violence. From not doing to my three younger brothers what was being done to me, an inner life experience came into being. To be continually searching and questioning, to try and be in a deeper, more meaningful realm of thought, feeling, and innermost being. I ask what is going on inside myself by focusing inwardly on my thought and feeling to avoid calamity. To be alive, if only for one moment, one spark to be. To seek to experience inner creation as a miracle of being, of inspiration and light. I try to avoid paths to oblivion by not giving obscenity or spite a life of their own. Prolonged isolation can warp my humanity. To attempt to put body and soul into aspiring and striving towards higher level of feelings and compassion, empathy, liking, and caring of my fellow man and woman. To do what will be fulfilling in my attempt to make life desirable to live in a way of light and spirit. To choose hope over despair and unhappiness. To choose faith over bitterness and cynicism. To try and feel a warmth of feeling of brotherly love. To have a stream of thought to travel upon. For today to be sincere in living in an honorable way by following a quest for inner light and spirit. At one time, as a broken human being, I took solace in an inner world of aloneness. It was my choice. I became a captive to it. Aloneness cast a spell upon my endeavors. I began to idealize suicide. I struggled. I continually made an attempt to find something within that would compel me to be in a way of a higher good and feel alive. I was unsuccessful. To find a path other than one of a preponderance of emotional pain that made being awake and living life miserable, to get through the day without self-destructing or sabotaging my hopes and dreams. My adult addictions of gambling, drinking, and smoking gave life to a pull downwards by way of a spiritual gravity towards a lower descent of thought, feeling, and being. My addictions were disguised as inner friends, yet they were foes of a living soul that yearned for a fulfilling life of light and spirit. I want to reject and negate the heavy weight of depression I feel. I am not damaged or broken beyond repair. I am alive. There is a search, a hunt for being and meaning within, for higher sacred truths, and a spiritual sanity within my faith to be unbroken. Each day to awaken to a new beginning and an adventure of spirit, to search and to recover the miracle of being and inner creation that I once experienced as a child. To break free from the dominance of the ruins of my past, to attempt to strive for what I hope will be true for me, to search for a brightening of light, to vanquish the malevolence and depravity that was done to me. A whisper in a distant dream. No, not that. The feeling and experience of brokenness still haunts me today. If for only a few moments to make an attempt to give myself a sense of accomplishment and being within. My spiritual sanity is having a truer, higher sense of my inner reality. I seek to ask questions, to provoke thought, and to spark inspirations. And in an attempt at being, to sit alone, battling the stillness, the monotony of passing time, avoiding a yawning abyss. The inner life is both real and worthwhile. I can choose to try to be kind, gentle of manner, humorous, and respectful, to express brotherly love towards my fellow man and woman. If I can make an attempt to envision a light of inner beauty within others, then maybe I will be more worthy of their friendship and acquaintanceship. To make an attempt to aspire upwards in will and in spirit. The poisons of my soul have been my alcoholism and other addictions that have sought to destroy the inner me. I wasn't aware I was diminishing my living soul by becoming a lost one. To avoid being self-defeated in my feelings, attitudes, and actions. Lethargy and mental laziness have stifled the inner creation of being and light within me. Where I had given up before, now I make a willful effort. I seek a spiritual sanity obtained by making choices of a spiritual nature to guide me in my doings in my attempt at being. I can practice any one of several spiritual ideals, beginning with either honesty, hope, faith, inner courage, integrity, willingness, humility, and being of service to others instead of being a victim. For me, the search for my expression of self, the search for my expression of being was choosing living over dying within, not to be a dead person inside myself, to take a risk, to try to express vulnerability and sensitivity as inner strength in this world instead of weaknesses, to feel shamed, humiliated, or broken with, not to give in to lower feelings such as rage, hatred, or spite. These are intoxicants in an ill way. Though I hate what I experienced and what my biological father did to me, I can use these past memories to feel more intensely for others, not to tolerate my biological father's acts of evil inside of me. There are actions within my innermost thoughts that I can choose. A brightness of light over a bleakness and abandonment of being. A healing instead of being burdened by shame and its dishonor. To not be afflicted with hate, choosing life within, and the coming to be of uplifting feeling and inspiration. My hopes lie within. They are of value, meaning, and inner truth. I am alive. How may I live my life in order to feel that it is being fulfilled? to take a risk, to acquire an inner courage, hopefully of light and of a willing spirit. A whisper in a distant dream, a secret pathway within, embarking embarking upon a journey of innermost light and being, a sunburst of golden, yellow beams to brighten night into day, glistening rainbow sparkles of light and inner beauty within another, to sight the gleam from within your gaze, fluttering bright twinkles of a silver blue mist, to brighten my day into cheer. I thank you for letting me make your acquaintance. Sweet, that's the end of chapter 11 of Over 1,000 Beatings, Spiritual Sanity, and the Rejection of Evil by Bill Neely. And I'll probably see you next Sunday. Hopefully if all goes well. Yeah. This time I'm gonna shut it down. End stream. End.